In today's rapidly shifting global order, South Africa faces a delicate balancing act in navigating its foreign policy. Positioned at the crossroads of Africa's key economic and geopolitical arenas, the country's diplomatic choices have far-reaching consequences not only for its future but for the entire continent. With key global players like Russia, China, and the United States all vying for influence, the stakes for South Africa have never been higher. Can South Africa continue making bold diplomatic decisions without alienating key allies, or is it necessary to secure future economic prosperity? Should it risk billions in trade, thousands of jobs, and its global standing for strategic alliances? Before we dive deeper into this important issue, don't forget to subscribe to the African Web and hit the bell icon, so you never miss any of our deep dives into Africa's most pressing matters. South Africa's foreign policy has evolved considerably since the end of apartheid. During the apartheid era, South Africa was isolated from much of the global community. After 1994, the country focused on rebuilding relationships and positioning itself as a key player in the African Union, AU, and beyond, following a policy of neutrality and non-alignment. However, the geopolitical landscape has changed dramatically over the last decade. The rise of China and the resurgence of Russia's influence, coupled with a shifting stance from the US toward Africa, have forced South Africa to re-evaluate its role. For a nation that has historically balanced relations across the political spectrum, these changes are not just choices, they are vital to the country's survival. South Africa's relationship with Russia is rooted in history. During the apartheid era, the Soviet Union was one of the few global powers that supported the African National Congress, ANC, in its struggle for freedom, providing military, financial, and diplomatic support. That bond has endured, influencing South Africa's foreign policy decisions even today. More recently, South Africa's neutral stance on the Russia-Ukraine conflict has drawn criticism from Western nations, particularly the United States. While the US and the EU have imposed sanctions on Russia, South Africa has called for peace through dialogue, signaling a deeper alignment with Russia's broader geopolitical goals. South Africa's involvement in joint military exercises with Russia, such as Moscow, further complicates its relations with the West. But why does South Africa maintain this stance? Is it a calculated risk to secure long-term interests, or a step too far? Parallel to its relationship with Russia, South Africa's economic ties with China have flourished. China has become South Africa's largest trading partner, with bilateral trade surpassing $54 billion in 2021. China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, has brought substantial investments in infrastructure, from roads and railways to ports, transforming the South African economy. However, this relationship isn't without its risks. The debt that comes with China's investments raises questions about sovereignty and long-term dependency. How much control is South Africa willing to cede to China in exchange for economic growth? As South Africa deepens its ties with China, what impact will it have on its relationship with other global powers? AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, has been instrumental in boosting trade between the US and sub-Saharan Africa since 2000. For South Africa, AGOA has been a lifeline, allowing it to export goods like vehicles, agricultural products, and precious metals duty-free to the US market. In 2022 alone, South Africa exported over $3.6 billion worth of goods to the US under AGOA provisions. Yet, South Africa's growing ties with Russia and China have led to growing concerns in Washington. Critics argue that South Africa's alignment with Russia undermines AGOA's founding principles. With the future of AGOA uncertain, what would the loss of duty-free access to the US market mean for South Africa's economy? The potential return of Donald Trump to the White House in 2025 could have a major impact on US-Africa relations. Trump's America First approach during his first term led to a focus on US interests, often sidelining Africa. As South Africa strengthens its relationships with Russia and China, the US may reconsider its trade relationships with South Africa, especially if Trump returns to power. Could the US under Trump impose sanctions or reassess South Africa's eligibility for AGOA? The dynamics between the two nations could change drastically. South Africa's leaders will have to decide how to handle this potential shift in US policy. South Africa's role in the BRICS bloc, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, offers a platform to challenge Western-dominated global institutions and promote a multipolar world. For South Africa, BRICS represents not just economic cooperation, but also a vision for Africa's sovereignty and independence from the global powers of the West. But as tensions between the US and China escalate, South Africa finds itself in a tight spot. How can it balance its commitments to BRICS and its own economic interests, while maintaining relationships with traditional Western powers? It's a delicate balancing act, one that will determine South Africa's role in Africa's future development. The decisions South Africa makes in the coming years will have profound effects on its future and the future of Africa. President Cyril Ramaphosa faces immense pressure to balance domestic issues like unemployment and corruption with the need to secure South Africa's position in an increasingly competitive and polarized world. South Africa's relationship with global powers, including Russia, China, and the United States, will be critical to shaping its economic prosperity. But these relationships come with significant risks and trade-offs. Can South Africa afford to alienate the West in pursuit of closer ties with Russia and China? Or should it prioritize maintaining its access to markets like the US through agreements like AGOA? The global community is watching closely. South Africa's future foreign policy choices will likely influence broader regional trends across the continent. Will South Africa emerge as a beacon of African leadership, asserting itself on the world stage, or will its internal challenges hinder its ambitions? Only time will tell. This era of shifting global alliances presents both opportunities and dangers. South Africa is positioned to capitalize on these opportunities, but only if it navigates its foreign policy choices wisely. The global balance of power is shifting, and South Africa's decisions will shape the continent's place in the evolving world order. The growing influence of African countries, particularly in multilateral settings, provides South Africa with an opportunity to push for a new, more inclusive global order. South Africa's engagement with the African Union, AU, will be critical in shaping the continent's collective position on global issues. As South Africa continues to engage with global powers, its ability to strike a balance between economic growth, security, and international relations will be tested. The country's leadership will need to assess not only what is best for South Africa, but also what is best for Africa as a whole. The trajectory of South Africa's foreign policy will be influenced by a multitude of factors, including economic considerations, domestic concerns, and its global standing. How South Africa handles its relationships with Russia, China, and the United States in the coming years will determine its place on the global stage, and whether it can continue to be a leader in Africa's development. The decisions made today will have lasting effects, shaping the future not only of South Africa, but also of the entire continent. It is a crucial moment in history, and the path South Africa chooses could be a game changer for the African continent. What do you think? Should South Africa continue to deepen its ties with Russia and China, or should it prioritize its relationship with the United States and AGOA? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this in-depth exploration, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the African Web. Stay tuned for more insights into Africa's most important issues.